Well, before we have the questions, let me just, basic training at that time consisted of about 9 weeks at Fort Jackson, was 9 weeks. And what they did was they went through the very basic exercises that we had to do every day. A lot of running. They taught us how to fire weapons. One of the big things was they tried to indoctrinate you. And what I meant by that was, for example, when you went to breakfast in the morning, you got in a line. Everything in the Army is a line. You get in a line, all right? So there were these plaques outside the mess hall. And if you were standing in front of plaque number 1, for example, plaque number 1 gave you a general order that you had to memorize. And the drill sergeant would come up and say, give me order number 1. And you better, like that, come up with the answer. If you didn't, back at the end of the line. So the next time you come up, you know, as the line moved, you were in front of 4, he'd ask you about number 4. And you didn't know that, back at the end of the line. So if you didn't learn the general orders, you didn't eat too quick in the morning. Okay, and the first general order is probably the only one I remember now was, if you get captured, what do you give them for information? Your name, rank, and serial number, that's it, nothing else. That's all you gave. So you better know that. Another part of the basic training was they would give classes, and what they taught you to do was just to react to things without thinking about them. In other words, make it intuitive. If something happened, you did this without thinking. That's what they wanted to do. So each class was over and over and over again. So that was their way of indoctrination. And then after basic is when and I can remember after basic, they took you in and they had an advisor. So you sat down with the advisor and he said, what do you really want to do in the Army? What's your dream job? And you told him all the things you wanted to do. Like me, I wanted to go into computers. And I told him all about that. And he shook his head, yeah, he said, oh, that's good stuff. So then they had a bunch of these stamps. So the ink pads, all right? So I'm watching this guy and I told him all about what I wanted to do. And when I was getting ready to leave, I looked back at what he was gonna do on my paper that I had. He takes a stamp and stamps it says infantry. That stamp was worn out that day. Everybody went to the infantry. That's why you were there. All this other stuff was nonsense. Just pipe dreams. Nobody got any better job on that day than infantry. So we went to advanced infantry training at, again, Fort Jackson. And that's where they got into more in-depth weapons. They taught us how to defuse mines, set up mines. We started some armored personnel carrier training. And I remember the day we did that was, because these things were supposed to be able to float. And they got us inside the track and it was going across a small pond. But it was empty. There was no ammunition in there and no other heavy stuff. So I don't think it would have floated from the tracks I saw in Vietnam. Okay, you'd have sunk. So that's about the thing for advanced training and basic training.
And during basic training, were there like memorable moments?
Oh yeah, again, a funny moment, all right? On the side of where our barracks company was a hill that went down, probably about 2 stories, okay, down. It was all grass, but but when it rained, we would go out on a run, and when we came back, we would hit that hill, all right? And they called it, pardon the language, drag-ass hill, all right? So you were all done after a long run. What they wanted you to do was run up that hill and beat the drill sergeant to the top. And of course, he walked, all right? And if you didn't make it to the top of that hill, the whole company, you had to go back down again. Well, that wasn't bad on a dry day when it was raining. You'd get up 3/4 up the hill. The first one would slide and fall and knock everybody down. So it was like a bowling alley. And that was drag, okay? The other thing was the barrackses were on stilts about that high off the ground, okay? And under them was sand. And if he didn't like, the drill sergeant didn't like what we were doing on a particular day, he would say, line up on the side of the barracks and low crawl across to the other side. And when you got done, you had eaten a bunch of sand and you were nasty. That was a punishment. But we knew he liked to do that to us. So one Sunday, we were out just hanging around because they left us alone on Sunday. He came in with his family to visit the company area. So we lined up on the side of the barracks and low crawled across just to embarrass him. He didn't like that too much, but we did it to him anyway.
Were there people during like the basic training that like try to back out or quit, and like people who like refuse to do the actual basic training?
No, it was hard to back out because they prodded you to do it. Okay? But there was one guy in our platoon who used to wait for the lights to go out at night, and he would take his duffel bag and pack all his stuff and go AWOL. And they would catch him a couple of days later and bring him back again. And he did this about 3 or 4 times. So eventually, he got so good at it, he would pack his clothes and leave them underneath the front stairs. There were wooden stairs, so there was a place you could go in. He would put his bag under there so that way he could get out of the barracks quicker, so he could take off.
What do you call it? During like the ending of basic training, when you were gonna like actually like head into war, what's it called? Like, what were you feeling? Like, were you nervous or?
At the end of basic training?
Yeah.
Oh, we were happy because that was not a fun time. They really got on us. They, like I say, they were pit bulls on steroids. They really were.
The second part of that, Dan, was what did you find out you were actually going to Vietnam?
We found that out for sure in AIT.
What's AIT?
Advanced infantry training. That second 9 weeks. We were at a class and they said, I hope you guys realize you're all going to Vietnam. So you might as well tell your folks back home and prepare them for it. And that's how we found out.
Does anyone have questions?
Yeah. Was there anything that you learned in basic that stuck with you throughout the rest of your life?
You know, I think it is. I think there was a lot of stuff I learned in that basic training. And basically what it was how to deal with people. Because you met all kinds of different people there. You know, some people were tough, some people were mild. You know, how you can deal with them. And it served me well throughout my life. Because I feel I can get along with people. And I think that really helped it.
Josh, he had his hand up first.
What was the hardest part of BMT?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
Oh
that.
wait, what?
What was the hardest part of basic training?
Oh, what was the hardest part of basic?
I don't think I found basic training that hard. I was still in pretty good shape, you know, physically, so the exercising didn't bother me. I was pretty good at firing weapons. I fired expert there, so I didn't think I had a hard time there.
Did you do the gas mask training?
That we had in AIT, the Advanced Infantry Training, the gas mask training. What they did was, they taught us how to put the gas mask on, and they walked us up to a house, and you went inside the house without your gas mask on, and then they turned the gas on. It was tear gas, and they taught you how to purge your mask and put it on so you could survive in the room. And we did that a couple of times until we got it right. There is one time when I was in Vietnam when we were gassed for real, and we didn't have the gas mask with us. And that was tough, and it was CS gas, which is a lot worse than tear gas.
Christian, you had a question?
Oh yeah. You made any friends while in basic training or outside of basic training?
Yes, I did. There was a guy named Mike from Windsor. We became good friends. There was another gentleman by the name of Joe Healy, who was a real good friend of mine. And what I liked about that kid was he was from the Queens, New York, and he loved baseball. He never went anywhere without his baseball glove and a ball. And whenever there was a stoppage in something, right away you'd have to play ball with him. But he was a real funny kid. Really enjoyed him.
Do you think like basic training prepared you for what you saw?
I don't think basic did. I think basic just groomed me for advanced infantry training. That was where we learned how to do stuff.
What was the environment like in Vietnam?
The environment in Vietnam,
Like just like the landscape, or like how?
well, let me tell you my first experience with landing in Vietnam, all right? They opened the door to the plane and we were walking out. And when of course, in an airplane, it was air conditioned. The minute I got out that door, it was like a blowtorch. It was hot. It was unbelievable hot. And there were 2 seasons in Vietnam, okay? One was the rainy season, where it rained every day. You were constantly wet. And the other season was the dry season, which was probably just as bad, because there was no rain and everything was dusty. So everywhere you went, there was clouds of dust and stuff, especially being on tracks. It created a lot of dust and dirt.
Yes, Mr. Hall.
Before you jump to Vietnam,
Yep.
I was wondering, looking back, how well prepared were you, do you think, through basic training and being prepared to go into Vietnam?
I think the training I received up to that point was pretty good, okay, for basic stuff. But my real training for Vietnam was when we got to Vietnam, I went through another set of schools, jungle school. That's what really prepared me for Vietnam, specifically.
Any more questions?
On the other slide, I saw those medals you got. How'd you get all of them?
I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. If I had to do it now, I probably wouldn't have them. I mean, it was youth. You know, it was just, I did things automatically.
Can you give a couple examples of the types of medals that you have?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I don't know if you folks in the back can see all these, but this one right here is the Purple Heart. You got that, you didn't earn it, it happened to you. If you got hurt there, you got a Purple Heart. Okay? This one here, that's the Bronze Star. That I got during the Tet Offensive when we had a tremendous firefight one night. And this one here is called the Soldier's Medal. They gave that for heroism not under fire. Okay, how I got that one was an ammo dump blew up one night in our base camp, and there were guys in there who were hurt. So we went in and got them out. And the guys that went in to get them out, that's what they gave us for it. This one here was the Army Commendation Medal.
Oh,
That one was, we got into a minor firefight and we chased a bunch of Vietnamese down. And that's, whoever chased them down and caught them, that's what they gave us. This one, and this one, these 3, everybody got when you went to Vietnam. Those are the 3. They could tell right away that you were in Vietnam, those 3. This one was the Good Conduct Medal, which means I didn't go to jail or anything in the service.
Good theater.
I was in the 1st Infantry Division, the Red 1. That's what that is. That's a patch. This one is I fired expert on a rifle. This one here is, that's a combat infantry badge, the CIB they call it. The only ones who got that were the ones who were actually in combat. If you drove a truck over there or worked in logistics, you didn't get that. okay, and the wreath around it like that, the white wreath. If you were, for example, in Korea, while we were in Vietnam, you got the blue rifle without the wreath. You got the wreath because you were in Vietnam. Army's kind of a stickler on what they give you for stuff. This one here and this one were my units. That was my 2nd of the 2nd in Vietnam. That was the 5th of the 6th when I was back in Fort Hood, Texas. And this one the state of Connecticut gave me when we come back. This is a belt buckle because I participated in a veteran study down in Albuquerque, New Mexico for Agent Orange. You had to be invited to that. And they put you in a hospital for 3 days down there to find out if you had Agent Orange in you. And I was surprised to find out I did. Because that's one of those, you ever hear of the lifelong, like things that in the water that you drink that you can never get rid of again? Well, if you got exposed to Agent Orange, you got it.
Do you
Okay,
know what Agent Orange was?
it's defoliant.
So, right, so think of like the jungles in Vietnam, right? They needed a way to clear it. So the United States military used chemicals to clear, right? But that chemical was called Agent Orange. At the time, I'm not sure if they knew or not how dangerous it would be to humans.
They didn't know how dangerous it was, but one of the things I did in Vietnam, you didn't always do fighting, okay? What we would do is we would go and secure an area, like a jungle, a small, one of them was the trombone jungle, they called it, because of the shape of it. We secured that area, so that way the Rome plows are big plows with very shaped blades on it that could cut down trees as it went through, all right? And it would drop all the trees and foliage in it, and then the planes would come over and spray Agent Orange on it, and so that way it wouldn't grow back again. Okay, it was a way of clearing the land, so you didn't have to worry about Charlie or the North Vietnamese being in there. So we did a lot of that over there. What we didn't realize was that we were exposed to it too, because we were there where they were spraying.
And Agent Orange has been linked to cancer, right?
There's right now there's probably 12 assumptions of diseases that Agent Orange can form. Like I do have one of them. Okay, I had ischemic heart disease because of it. And that they say was caused by Agent Orange if you were exposed to it at an early age.
Do you know if there's still lasting effects of it in Vietnam? In the greenery in it?
You know, that's interesting you brought that. Yeah, this probably is. And I think those, and it's not only the GIs, you realize GI is an Army guy's term, okay, for us. We got exposed to Agent Orange, but so didn't the people there and the kids. So that's what that country is still dealing with right now.
So as we kind of shift into Vietnam experiences.
I just wanna ask you, how long did it take before the government or they would acknowledge the Agent Orange issue with its soldiers?
Well, I can only go by my own experience, okay, but I got out of the service in '68, okay? It was 1983 when I got an invitation to go to Lovelace Medical Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They go to a hospital for 3 days, and I was tested for it, and they told me I had it. So it was that long, and that wasn't even generally known then. They were testing GIs that they knew were exposed to it because of the units we were in. They tracked the units. There's a website you can go to and track every unit that was in Vietnam. You could see where they were day after day. Okay, and they knew which soldiers to go after. And some of the guys that I was in that study with were guys that were in my company in Vietnam.
Quite a while before.
Yes.
Quite a while.
And they're still dealing with it. They're still coming up with assumptives for it.
So as we transition into talk of Vietnam and the experiences during the war. We have some pictures that we can share of my father in country. In country is a term of being in Vietnam, right? And the soldiers were there. Just reminder to everyone that, you know, we're gonna ask some questions, and there's gonna be some super sensitive information that I think we've talked to you about that you want to avoid in your questioning. If there's something that you feel that you'd like to pass on, you're welcome to do that as far as the question, but we're looking forward to hearing what you experienced there, as much as you feel comfortable with. So Gavin, can you just flip some of the, so there's some actual pictures of my father. A little skinnier, a little younger.
Right, which one was him in the first one?
If you go back to
Yeah,
the,
go back up, go back and up. Okay, that's me. And that was a platoon sergeant. That was see, when you're out in the field, this is what it looked like.
can someone hit the lights?
Mainly look at the background, okay? This is where we had cleared, remember the jungle clearing? We had cleared it out, we're in there, okay? This here is where we were, our base camp out in the field where we sandbagged, and you would see the mess tent and the commo track antennas. This guy right here, he's an interesting character. He was an artillery RTO, they call him, all right? And he got wounded, and you wouldn't believe it. He got shot through the mouth and never broke a tooth. What? Never broke a tooth. And I don't mean to get gory, but it was amazing that could happen. Dad, I fell asleep on the track. So over in Vietnam, you could sleep anywhere. If you sat down for a minute, you could go to sleep. And that's the inside of one of the armored personnel carriers with my commanding officer.
So you're on the left?
That's me over here.
So you're 10.
I was only 21 at that time. That's my best buddy over there. His name was Pritchard. He's from South Philly. South Philly. He was, you could see the size difference, okay? We used to play fight all the time. If he wanted to, he could have killed me in a millisecond. But we had a good time together. We were drinking buddies and everything, so. That is a barracks, a typical barracks in Fort Hood, Texas. That was my bunk when I got back here. I'm sorry? Yeah, that's a bunk beds.
Is that when you came home from war, or that's like?
That's when I came back from Vietnam. I went to Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay.
That was in the barracks,
Okay.
and those were the bunk beds in the barracks.
Alright, so now we can open it up for some questions, if you want. If we could turn the lights back on.